anything else, is a platform from which to sell the book. So I was talking to a lady just earlier downstairs who said that 80,000 people on the internet go to that site specifically to find out information on her book. That's a platform. That's telling me something, that's the only resource on the internet that is providing that information, and 80,000 people want it. That's a springboard. And there are loads of ways to provide a platform. We would pretty much now look at how many Twitter followers an author has. It's a pretty standard thing to do. It's not the be all and end all by any means. It's an interesting fact because it tells us already there is a certain amount of people who already want to hear what this person has to say. So I'm going to touch a bit on Twitter. I am a tweeter, but not the world's greatest. If I have it on all day at work, it would distract me so much. But I mean, I can absolutely say that it has transformed the way that we work as a tool. And first of all, I would say that I'm not trying to sell that you must go on Twitter. You should do it if you think you'd like it, and you shouldn't. Don't force it. See if it's for you, but you don't have to. It's not essential. But it is a very democratizing tool. It's very easy to. Well, you can see loads of things. I can now see who might be interested in a certain area, who's talking about a certain story. I can see when a journalist gets a proof. They might tweet, the new Danny Wallace novel has landed on my desk. So that gives me an idea. Okay, it's arrived. So maybe in a week I could check in and see if they've started reading it or enjoying it or whatever. It's also removed that it's removed that sort of publicist thing that you used to do slightly after an event where you'd say, oh, it was brilliant, it was absolutely brilliant, it was brilliant, thank you, it was brilliant. Because now you can just literally go on and be see whether people enjoyed it or not. It's really that easy. Pretty much every event someone will tweet about whether they've had a good time or not. I mean, most of the people have a really great time, so it's fine. But you now get it straight from the horse's mouth. It's brought us closer to our readers, and that will happen more and more. So I've briefly sketched out some key rules for Twitter, and I could live by some of these a lot better than I do. But I'd say make it personal and authentic. That's absolutely number one. Don't go on Twitter just because you've suddenly got something to promote. If the first thing you do is use it to promote, it's pretty much a busted flush, if that's not the right metaphor. But it's got to contain something of your voice first. It's got to, in some ways it should provide information, put out things that people will be interested in, because then they'll share it and share it and share it, and that's how Twitter grows and your numbers grow. You have to be providing something useful. Interact with people, reply to people. I know it's really basic, but talk, it's, social media. Share interesting facts, and then weave promotion into that framework, so once you've got your captive audience, it's likely that they're interested in your book or what you have to say, but you've got to establish that first. It's got to feel genuine. I've just put two great examples. I think Ottolenghi, the chef and restaurateur, who's one of our authors, is amazing on Twitter. I think Nigella Lawson, a Random House group author, is incredible. I think there's personal colour. I think everyone wants to see behind the scenes at an Ottolenghi photo shoot, or that's what Nigella's having for her tea or whatever. People are interested in that small. It might be a celebrity-driven world, but people like those small little insights. But she's also answering readers' questions. If someone asks where Much Loved Recipe is, she'll mention which book it is. She's talking to people. She's funny on it. It's sort of nice and light. It just seems to me to be a very good example. She'll point people to her website, sometimes to her books. It works for everything she's got going on, but it feels sort of relaxed and natural. I think that's probably the best way I could sum up a useful Twitter platform. And the same goes for Facebook, I guess, and all those other social medias, and Pinterest. And if you're very visually driven, then maybe check out Pinterest, which is a new photo sharing thing, or check out Tumblr, which if you don't have time to write a blog, Tumblr is a very good way to have a photo-driven blog. So the photo is the hero of the piece, and the words come second. You can't do all of them, so work out which one will work best for your style and your life. So other things to do to establish yourself is definitely see if you can develop a one-line pitch for what your book is, because you're going to end up doing it loads. it's essential for us, for our sales team to use retailers when they only have a limited amount of time. Publicists use positioning statements the whole time. I mean, some people really like going in with the, it's Sophie Hannah meets Nikki French or whatever. Some people don't like doing that. Definitely journalists have told me that is really useful, because if I know that my readers like Sophie Hannah and Nikki French, you've already sort of half got me. So, if you think that your work can be summed up in that way, I don't mean that to sound reductive, but it can be a helpful, it can be something that instantly will help you out. And then have a life outside of writing. I mean, I know that sounds, but having a more interesting life makes you a more interesting and promotable person. It's totally obvious. I'm sorry to be so obvious, but especially in fiction, you'll sometimes end up talking about other things that you do in your life, other interests. If you've done something extraordinary, someone will want to hear about it, and you can use it in some way to promote your book. You need to work out before you begin the publicity process if you're happy to draw on your past, are you happy to talk about your family and be personal. The Guardian family, which is, I think is so brilliant, is chock full of people who are doing press because they've got the current project, but are talking about something extraordinary that happened to them, really sort of opening themselves up, but are sharing it for a reason, because people are interested, because people like stories, I suppose, and so work out which stories you're prepared to share. They don't necessarily have to be the ones that you've written down if you're writing fiction. And then quickly, I've marked a section, how to become more promotable once your book is signed, because I know everyone's at different stages, but get to know your publicist, talk to them and tell them those things that might have happened in the past in your family, if you've done something extraordinary, if you used to run an amazing restaurant in Spain and, left because, to become a diver or whatever, the sort of life that people want to hear about, that, that's in the past, then you've got to tell your publicist that. I wrote this really carefully, but I've written positive and friendly working relationships are usually the most productive. But I think what I'm trying to say is that trying to keep those relationships positive is really important. If there is a problem, be honest, be direct, and try and avoid it in the first place by being clear between author and publicist in advance what you want to achieve and what your publicist thinks is realistic. Like, agree a plan. That's got to be. If you have huge plans that ultimately you might end up disappointed, and it's better to realise that first and to agree what you can do and agree precisely which areas of the press you can do it in, than end up disappointed 4 months down the line and then saying, oh, I'm so disappointed. The start is the right time to do that, I think. This is a sort of bugbear for me, but and it's not, I'm sure it won't be relevant for all of you, but probably perhaps more than you realise, but have strong visuals. I know you're all working really hard on the words, or have worked really hard on the words and stuff, but within the press, pretty much everything, if you think about it, has a photo to go alongside it. People like things to be illustrated. So have a great photo of yourself, or have a great photo of whatever you're talking about. Put it on the press release, send it to people. Use visuals to help position. This is a book that I love very, very much. It's a great book called The Kitchen Revolution, which we actually did about 4 years ago by 3 very, very talented food writers. It was sort of at the start of the wave of that credit crunch press, when the credit crunch was like that amusing thing where there were just some articles about making your clothes out of newspaper and stuff before it became a terrifying obsession. But this is a book about managing your household, shopping sensibly, whatever. But on the inside, it's a recipe for every day of the year. So there's loads and loads of brilliant recipes and text. But for various production reasons, whatever, it doesn't have any pictures in. And actually, some people love cookbooks with no pictures in. Simon Hopkinson's books, Roast Chicken and Other Stories, people say they love, because you're not disappointing yourself when you don't produce a food-styled image at 8 o'clock on a Tuesday night. But this is hard to promote like this, because there's no pictures of the authors, there's no pictures of the food. So what I did beforehand is get photos shot both of the authors and of the food, which I sort of sat on for a while and was like, oh God, what if I never used them or managed to place them and I've wasted the money? And then literally in the morning, turned the radio on, and Gordon Brown, the then Prime Minister, had declared, like, really publicly that he wants us to throw away less food and rediscover a 1950s style thrift, which is basically this was the book. So the Times, I mean, this is extraordinary when you work with a paper that does something this quickly, but from, you know, a 9:30 a.m. call, you know, there was a photographer on a bike to Zoe, one of the authors' workplace, by 2 o'clock. You know, words were being written, we provided them recipes, but crucially, we had the photos, and we had the photos of them, which I've lost the front, it was on the front page of T2 and above, you know, the masthead of the front paper. You know, there were pictures everywhere, and if we hadn't had the pictures, we wouldn't have got the piece, probably. So, you know, sometimes you do need visuals to back it up, and that's just a sort of extreme example of that. I've nearly finished, I promise. Other key things are work it on a local basis. This is one of our lovely fiction authors. I've slightly crowdsourced some of my fiction here from my talented colleagues, because, as I say, I don't work on loads of it. But her name's Anne Berry. She's come to us with her book, The Adoption, which has already got some really good buzz from Stylus magazine. It's one of the top picks of 2012. Anne, you know, has worked it incredibly well locally, knows her local Wardstones, her local independents, her library. She's part of this event coming up, World Book Night, showcasing Surrey authors. And there's a whole list of authors here who have their showcase that night, who are all local, who all support each other. That's a great, you know, that's a platform. That's, you know, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Introducing yourself to booksellers is a really good tip, because they know what is selling and what is working for them. And mostly, I think they're quite nicely forthright, so they'll tell you. So have a chat, meet them. There are some incredible booksellers, incredible librarians as well. Tiny point, but if you're particularly Scottish or Irish, the Scottish and Irish press tend to really look after their own. Jane Casey, we practically built in Ireland first, because she was born in Dublin. She lives in South London, but she was born in Dublin. Danny was born in Dundee and is often introduced as Scottish-born comedian Danny Wallace. He moved when he was like 6 or 7, I think. But you know, it's sort of the Scottish media and Irish media exist to cover a lot of, you know, Scottish and Irish people. So if you are, it's quite useful. Tiny point. If you're a genre fiction writer, then make sure you join. If you've got an association, then join it. There's a Crime Writers Association, the RNA for romantic novelists. If you write non-fiction, there's a Guild of Food Writers. There's a Historical Novelists Association. There'll probably be some sort of association, no matter what you're writing. So, you know, well, you're all here. You've all joined this association, but you know, meet like-minded people. It could help. And then what I've been saying all along is, you know, work it locally, work it online. This is another fiction book, The Midwife of Venice, we published, that my colleague put together a blog tour for. So it's 5 bloggers who all talk to each other on Twitter, who are all happy to promote the week as a whole. And they did Q&As, author interviews, extracts, and it was positioned as a tour around the sorts of those 5 blogs. And you know, again, that's building groundswell. Everything online will point to, you know, an e-tailer, an electronic retailer, a Kindle edition or an iBook or whatever. Amazon reviews are incredibly important to the consumer now. I mean, I know how much I use them. Our readers, you know, are now our critics. Like, it's that simple. So, you working it online, working that community, you know, is incredibly important. And you know, that as an area, it's given huge credence now. And then the final thing I've put is enjoy it. I mean, like, you know, it should hopefully be a good experience. And you know, I try to have fun with a book like Catlin, or I've got, you know, plans coming up with Danny that I think he'll enjoy and will enjoy. Don't sign up for things you don't want to do. You know, there's a festival in Cornwall that's like 200 miles away. If you don't think you want to drive for 6 hours and, you know, hang out in a field for the weekend, just don't do it. You know what you want to do. Like, sign up for the things you think you'll enjoy, and try and focus in that area, and, you know, hopefully it will be a good experience.
Ed, that was brilliant.